Max Blumenthal, you began last week to question the Israeli government when you talked, over the weekend the IDF admitted that it had doctored audio footage from its exchanges with the Gaza Flotilla. You reported on this as soon as the IDF released its doctored audio. This is the initial clip the IDF released last week.
Deputy White, this is the Israeli Navy. You are approaching an area which is under a naval blockade.
Shut up. Go back to Auschwitz.
We have permission from the Gaza port authorities to enter.
Was helping Arabs going against the U.S. Don't forget 9/11, guys.
Max Blumenthal, can you explain what you found fishy about this clip? Also, the IDF's retraction and your thoughts on that. Also, you managed to get an earlier apology from the IDF last week regarding a press release they sent out 2 days after the assault, claiming that approximately 40 flotilla passengers, quote, are mercenaries belonging to the Al-Qaeda terror organization. When you questioned the Israeli military press office, you didn't get the evidence you asked for, but the press release was modified. The original headline was changed from attackers of the IDF soldiers found to be Al-Qaeda mercenaries to read, quote, attackers of the IDF soldiers found without identification papers. Explain what's happened in these cases, the doctored audio and the press release.
Well, as soon as I arrived here in Israel, it became pretty clear to me that the IDF's press operation was being run by someone with the journalistic integrity of James O'Keefe. First, I found this press release where the IDF claimed that 40 people on board the Mavi Marmara were Al-Qaeda mercenaries, and their evidence was that they had night vision goggles and possibly gas masks, which clearly proves their link to bin Laden. So I called the IDF along with my journalistic colleague, Leah Tarachansky, who called them in Hebrew, I called them in English. We both got the same response. There is no evidence. This claim came from Netanyahu's inner circle, and they immediately changed the press release to say 40 passengers found without identification on board the Mavi Marmara, basically retracting the Al-Qaeda claim. The second lie we were able to basically prove was that the IDF had doctored the footage you played, which sounds sort of like a prank call by a mentally deficient pre-adolescent. And clearly what the IDF and what the Israeli government is trying to do is present the confrontation with the flotilla in the context of the Holocaust to further incite nationalistic sentiment among the Israeli public. And it succeeded, but they have admitted that they doctored the footage and have now released, after releasing a previous audio clip which presented entirely different audio from the same exchange, a new audio clip presenting different audio which they claim is the full exchange, but now they've claimed that a lot of this audio did not come from the Mavi Marmara, the Turkish ship. So their story isn't holding up, and what this demonstrates is that nothing that the IDF says can be trusted, not one single word. And Israel has said, the Israeli military has said they're happy to carry out their own investigation, but they are refusing to allow an international investigation. This proves why an Israeli military, an Israeli government investigation will ultimately be a whitewash. And the Israeli media has accepted, and the Washington Post and the New York Times have accepted the lies being pumped out of the IDF press shop at face value and have not issued corrections after reporting on these proven lies. The Washington Post's Glenn Kessler reported, and this is almost his exact language, that passengers aboard the Mavi Marmara repeatedly shouted, "Go back to Auschwitz," at the Israeli Navy, and he hasn't corrected himself. In fact, the IDF never even claimed that they repeatedly shouted that. They claimed that this was only shouted once. So I think all your listeners should call up the Washington Post's ombudsman, Andrew Alexander, and demand this correction, because the press can't be allowed to get away with this when even the IDF is correcting and clarifying itself.
Max Blumenthal, the Israeli government has been forced to apologize for circulating a spoof video mocking the activists aboard the Gaza flotilla. The YouTube clip is set to the tune of We Are the World, featuring Israelis waving weapons while singing We Are the World, but saying what? We con the world, we con the people. There's no people dying, so the best that we can do is create the biggest bluff of all. The clip featuring a group led by the Jerusalem Post Deputy Managing Editor Carolyn Glick, wearing keffiyehs and calling themselves the Flotilla Choir. The Israeli government press office distributed the video link to foreign journalists this weekend, but then it emailed out an apology.
Right. The distribution of this video by the IDF General Press Office, and it's also being passed around on the Facebook pages of a lot of mainstream Israeli journalists, according to my journalistic colleague, Didi Ramez, who monitors the Israeli media at a website called koteret.org, shows the collective insanity that's taken hold in Israel. Is the Israeli government and many people in the Israeli media apparently thought that this footage, which is just going to be clearly racist to anyone outside of this country, anti-Arab, just absolutely disgusting, was effective hasbara. Hasbara is the Hebrew word for public diplomacy, or at worst propaganda. And they believed that their own government had failed them in terms of hasbara, so they should resort to footage like this from people who are government apologists like Caroline Glick, but who aren't within the government. Some of the Israeli journalists I referred to have been distributing Glenn Beck's clips of Glenn Beck mocking the Gaza flotilla, as if Glenn Beck was somehow a credible source. People here in the media don't seem to understand that Glenn Beck is absolutely not credible and is regarded with scorn by the mainstream press throughout the world. And so this shows not only the catastrophe of public relations, but also the mood that's taken hold here, which is extremely right-wing, and relying on American neocons and American demagogues like Glenn Beck to tell the Israeli side of the story. The ultimate effect is the world sees through it. The international community and the international media increasingly views Israel as in the grips of a siege mentality, and Israeli nationalism is at a fever pitch. So it's a very, I think, dangerous and disturbing scenario. And it's playing out on the ground here every day.
Max, just a correction on that video, the spoof, it shows Palestinians waving, the activists on board the ship waving weapons.
Right. I'm not aware of any weapons that any activists had, but I just read an article in the popular Israeli daily newspaper, Yediot Ahronoth, where a writer proposed, after taking to task the government for its Hasbara PR failure, proposed that next time a flotilla arrives, the government essentially plant missiles and rockets on the flotilla, then display them on the beach at Ashdod when reporters arrive. So this is the thinking right now. It's a complete PR disaster for Israel, and it's promoting this nationalistic, jingoistic mood that I described among the Israeli public, and it's only getting worse.
Max Blumenthal, I want to thank you for being with us, Nash Nation Institute Fellow. His book is Republican Gomorrah, Inside the Movement That Shattered the Party. He's speaking to us from Jaffa, Israel.